This happened just last night in Oakland, and I'm still trying to process it. I'm a 29-year-old guy, fairly street smart, and I've lived here a couple of years without any real trouble. I know Oakland gets a bad rap for crime, but I've always felt like I'd be okay. I'm careful, I stick to lit areas, and as a guy, I figured I'd be an unlikely target. Turns out, I was wrong. It was around midnight when I stepped off the train at MacArthur BART station. I had been in San Francisco having dinner with a friend and caught one of the last trains back. The station was nearly deserted at that hour, the usual bustle gone. I thought about calling a Lyft for the final leg home, but it was only about a 15-minute walk, and I wanted to save a few bucks. I zipped up my jacket, took out my earbuds to stay alert, and started walking down 40th Street toward Broadway, like I always do. I expected to hear the usual city noises, maybe some late-night music or chatter, but this part of town was eerily quiet. A couple of cars whooshed by on the main road a block over, and far in the distance, I heard a lone siren wail. Up close, it was just me and my own footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. Storefronts were dark with their metal grates pulled down, and the streetlights gave off a weak orange glow, leaving long stretches of shadow in between pools of light. One lamp ahead of me flickered, buzzing softly. Every little sound seemed amplified. The tap of my shoes on concrete, a rustling candy wrapper skittering across the pavement, the distant hum of the freeway. I could even hear a neon beer sign buzzing in the window of a closed bar. The emptiness of the street was starting to get under my skin. To keep calm, I focused on my destination: get home, reheat my leftover pizza, and crash in bed. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Still, I found myself glancing over my shoulder every minute or so. Nothing but silent, empty street behind me. I probably looked paranoid, a lone guy constantly checking over his shoulder, but I couldn't shake the feeling. At one point, I even considered pulling out my phone and pretending to be in a conversation, just to feel less alone. My heart was beating a little bit faster than usual, so I tried taking deep breaths and pick up the pace. I was only a couple of blocks from my apartment when I first noticed it. A low rumble of an engine came from somewhere behind me, and my shadow stretched out long in front of me under headlights. A vehicle was coming up 40th Street, and strangely, it was going very slowly. I moved a bit to the side to let it pass. As it drew closer, I glanced back casually and saw it was an old van. Maybe dark blue or black, with tinted windows. The kind of van that makes you uneasy on an empty street at midnight. It rolled past me almost at walking speed. I could just make out two figures in the front. Instead of continuing down the road, the van pulled over to the curb about a half block ahead of me and stopped. Its brake lights burned red in the darkness, just parked there. My stomach did a flip. There was no good reason for a van to stop there, not at this hour, not on a block where everything was closed. I felt a surge of anxiety. I slowed my pace, putting more distance between me and the vehicle. My mind was racing through possibilities. Maybe they were lost and checking a map. Maybe it was an Uber driver waiting on a rider. Both felt like stretches at this time of night. I hovered near the corner, debating if I should turn down a side street or even go back toward the station. In the end, I decided to keep heading toward Broadway, but I crossed to the opposite sidewalk, hoping to avoid walking right past the van. My heart was thudding now. I figured if they were up to something, maybe they'd move on if I didn't come near. For a long moment, nothing happened. The van just idled there, exhaust faintly visible in the cold night air. I pretended to scroll my phone, standing under the streetlight at the corner, eyes flicking up every second. The van's driver's side door never opened. It just sat with the engine running. I remember realizing I was holding my breath. Just as I started to think I might be overreacting, the van's headlights came on again. Without signaling, it pulled away from the curb and took a sharp turn onto Broadway, disappearing around the corner ahead of me. I exhaled in relief, laughing nervously at myself. Maybe it really was nothing, some guy looking for an address or picking someone up. I told myself to relax. I headed up Broadway toward my street, walking a little bit faster than before. I didn't see the van now, and the white avenue in front of me looked empty. A block ahead, I could see the familiar red and green neon sign of a 7-Eleven at 41st Street. That 7-Eleven is my go-to late-night spot, and seeing its lights made me feel safer. Just half a block more and I'd be at the store, practically home. I started to calm down, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. I was 10 or 20 yards from the 7-Eleven when I caught some movement to my left. Out of a side street ahead, maybe 41st, right by the store, a pair of headlights slowly emerged. They were off at first, and then flicked on, sweeping the road. A van. My heart sank. It was the van, creeping out from the cross street as if it had been lying in wait. They must have looped around the block. In that moment, under the harsh white glare of its headlights, I realized they were waiting for me. Panic hit me hard. I instinctively backed up a step. The van swung out onto Broadway and sped up, closing the distance toward me. "Run!" my brain screamed, finally snapping out of my paralysis. I spun around and bolted back the way I'd come, sprinting now on pure adrenaline. Behind me, I heard the van's engine rev loudly. In seconds, it pulled up alongside me, screeching to a stop so close that I almost ran into it. The van skidded at an angle, blocking my path on the sidewalk. The passenger door flew open, and a man jumped out, moving fast. My throat clenched in terror. He was about my height, solidly built, dressed in dark clothes with a hood up. A bandana or mask covered the lower half of his face. I caught a quick glimpse of metal in his other hand. He had a knife. In that split second, a surge of pure fear and disbelief flooded me. This was the exact nightmare scenario I'd always imagined. Some stranger trying to force me into a van. It was actually happening. I think I shouted or maybe just gasped because my throat was so dry it hurt. The man's hand clamped down on my left arm hard, and he started yanking me toward the open van door. I immediately twisted and threw my weight back, screaming, "No, get off me!" My voice came out louder and more desperate than I've ever heard it, echoing down the empty street. I remember one crystal clear thought flashing through my mind. Don't let them get you in the van. I don't even know where I heard it. Probably some true crime story or self-defense advice online, but I knew it was life or death. If he got me into that van, I had a sickening feeling I might never come back out. That thought alone gave me a burst of panic-fueled strength. The driver was coming around the front of the van now, trying to help his buddy subdue me. I felt the first guy's grip shift for just a second as he tried to grab me better. I seized that tiny chance. With my free arm, I swung wildly across the face. At the same time, I kicked out as hard as I could, and my foot connected with his leg. I think I hit his knee or shin. "Ow, you little..." he yelled, reflexively loosening his hold on me. His knife clattered to the ground as he stumbled. I wrenched myself free with a frantic yank, actually slipping out of my jacket which he still had a hold of. I almost fell to the pavement but managed to keep my balance. Everything in me was screaming, "Run!" I spun and bolted away, sprinting toward the lights of the 7-Eleven just up the block. My legs felt like they were on fire, but I didn't dare stop. I heard the driver shout something behind me, furious, incoherent yelling. And I think I heard the other guy cursing in pain or anger. I didn't turn around to look. I was just running, pumping my arms, hearing my own heart pounding in my ears. A dog started barking like crazy from a house nearby, probably stirred by all the shouting. In my peripheral vision, I saw a porch light flick on across the street. Somebody might have heard me. I think those things made the kidnappers hesitate. As I neared the 7-Eleven, I chanced a quick glance over my shoulder. The guy I'd kicked was hobbling back toward the van, and the driver was already retreating, one foot inside the vehicle. They looked startled. Maybe they hadn't expected me to fight back so hard, or make such a ruckus. I saw the passenger door still hanging open and the van starting to move. The tire squealed as the driver floored it. They sped off into the night, the van's door slamming shut from the momentum. I didn't stop running until I was through the door of the 7-Eleven. I practically burst inside, nearly knocking over a display of chips by the entrance. The harsh fluorescent light and the smell of stale coffee hit me all at once. I must have looked half insane, wide-eyed, sweating, missing a jacket, and gasping for breath. The clerk behind the counter jumped, eyes huge, like I might be there to rob the place. I held up my hands, shaking uncontrollably, and managed to yell, "Call 911. Two guys, they just tried to grab me." My voice was cracking and way too loud. I realized I was still yelling, so I stopped and quickly locked the glass door behind me, shoving the security bolt, if there was one. I didn't even know if that would help, but it made me feel slightly safer. The clerk nervously peeked out the window while dialing the police. I sank to the floor next to an ATM, my back against the cold glass of the cooler doors, trying to catch my breath. My whole body was trembling. I couldn't tell if it was from the fight or the adrenaline crash after. Probably both. I remember my hands were tingling and my face was wet. I think that's when I noticed I was crying. The police arrived within a few minutes, though it felt like an eternity. An officer came into the store and gently asked me what happened. I was still in shock, stumbling over my words, but I managed to get the story out. How the van had followed me, how the men tried to force me in. The clerk chimed in that he hadn't seen the van. It was gone by the time he looked, but he definitely heard me screaming outside. The cops took me outside to their patrol car, and I gave a statement with as much detail as I could. The make of the van, maybe mid-90s, I guessed. Its color, the fact one guy had a bandana and a knife. I was honestly so rattled, I could barely remember the license plate. But I gave them what little I thought I saw of it. They promised to cruise the neighborhood and look for anything matching that description. By the time the police finished with questions, it was almost 1:30 in the morning. One of the officers offered to drive me the few blocks home, and I gratefully accepted. As I finally stepped into my apartment, the reality of what just happened fully hit me. I closed and double-locked my door, then just sank to the floor of my living room, shaking. I didn't bother turning on more than one lamp. I just sat in the dim light for a long time, replaying everything. The van's slow creep, that man's eyes over the bandana, the feeling of his hand clamped on my arm. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted. Maybe it was a simple robbery turned kidnapping for ATM cash, or maybe even something worse. All I know is that I came terrifyingly close to being shoved into a van by total strangers. It's now early the next morning as I write this, and I haven't been able to sleep at all. Every time I close my eyes, I see that knife in the streetlight and feel that grip on my arm. I keep thinking about how unbelievably lucky I was to get away. A second longer, a bit more strength on his part, and I would have been overpowered. If I hadn't screamed and fought with everything in me, if a neighbor hadn't flipped on their light, I might be in the back of that van right now, or worse. That thought chills me to the core. I wanted to share this story as a cautionary tale. I never imagined something like this would happen to me, but it did, just a few blocks from my home on a quiet weeknight. Please trust your instincts. If something feels off, a strange car, a person following too closely, don't shrug it off like I almost did. I'm definitely never walking home late and alone without a second thought. Next time, I'll just pay for the Uber or call a friend, no matter how safe I think it is. I'm still shaken up, but I'm safe. I know not everyone gets away like I did, and I'm beyond grateful right now. Stay alert out there and stay safe. And to the two men in that van who thought they could just snatch me off the street, let's not ever meet again.